My name is Eric Garcia. I will be today's presenter on OSHA's top 10 most cited violations. Like I always do with my webinars or any live class, I like to start them off with a dad joke. How does that sound? So what do you call a factory that only produces okay products? It's called a satisfactory. Thank you. Let me go ahead and start today's presentation. As I was mentioning earlier, my name is Eric Garcia. I am an authorized OSHA trainer. I've been in safety for 23 years now. It's just our passion here at ehsInc. We do have an agenda to cover. We do have introductions to cover, resources I want to share with you. Obviously, the OSHA's top 10 most cited. We're going to cover in detail what each violations or the top 5 violations within each topic, right? And the applicable regulation, and followed by the hierarchy of controls. And then if we have time, if time permits, we're going to go ahead and do a group exercise. I really want to close today's presentation with the group activity. So let's go ahead and move forward here. So I want to just give a really quick, just a snippet of my employer, ehsInc, a little quick snapshot of what we do. I'm going to provide QR codes throughout the presentation, but we do it all. We pretty much a cliff note answer to what we do is we cover all 4 corners when it comes to OSHA compliance, safety, environmental health, in-person training. Virtual is what we're doing here, right? VILT. We do a lot of safety written program development, which is going to be a frequent topic in today's presentation. We do site inspections, job hazard analysis, temporary safety specialist placement as well. We do IH services like air monitoring, hearing conservation, things like that. And then we also do fit testing for respirators, which has been, wow, very popular for us in this pandemic that we're still in. So there you have it there. A quick introduction about the course. As you know, each year OSHA releases its published OSHA top 10 most cited violations. And we're going to cover which topics frequent that list. But a lot of this is result to a lack of an effective written program, safety awareness, and safety training. I mean, there's not one day that I can go on and not hear the word safety or training. But yet, ironically, it's still the reason why OSHA cites on these regulations. So we need to be on top of that. And we're going to cover that in greater detail. All right. Have you folks seen those pictograms, right? What's number 1? What do you think number 1 is? So it's fall protection, more specifically, general requirements. Number 1 is. So we're going to cover that coming up. Number 1 is fall protection, general requirements. Number 2, what do you think that is? It's hazard communication, right? Those GHS placards. Exactly. So what does that mean to you? Well, if you see an empty Gatorade bottle or a liquid of some sort in a Gatorade bottle, but someone put with a permanent marker acid, that's not effective labeling. And that's what OSHA will cite you on. So that's HAZCOM for short, hazard communication. Number 3, that should be an easy one, right? Yeah, it's going to be respiratory protection. That pictogram is specifically an N95, which a lot of debates, it is a respirator. But however, be careful because the KN95, which entered the market via Amazon, is not an official or OSHA accepted respirator. It doesn't have the NIOSH logo in front of it. So if you see anybody wearing a blank KN95 with no NIOSH logo in front of it, that is not a respirator. That can be used, however, for volunteer use, sure. But I wanted to throw that out there. Number 4, yeah, that's easy, right? Ladder. Yeah, ladders always makes the top 10. Absolutely. Number 5, scaffold. Yep. Number 6, what do you think that is? Lotto, lockout, tagout, right? Number 7, that looks like a powered industrial truck, more AKA forklift. You'd be amazed when we're going to go into this one in more detail. Oh my God. I can't believe we're still not doing what OSHA cites people on. It's crazy. Number 8, what is that? Kind of looks similar to number 1, but what is that person doing with the other people in that room? It is fall protection, more specifically, training requirements. So fall protection makes the list not once, but twice. Number 9, what is that? Yeah, eye and face protection. Yep. I mean, it could be under the broad category of PPE, sure. But OSHA does specify deeper that it is eye and face protection. Correct. And number 10, what is that? Is that cheerleading? So that is machine guarding. Okay, so you guys got it. So here's our first resource, but this is our infographic, right, that we've designed for you to kind of make it more aesthetically appealing for you. We're going to go into each topic more specifically, but pay special notice to the right side of each topic, the red and green. Yeah, so that means red is back, right? And then green means good, right? And we'll go into that in greater detail. But this is a really good graphic, a really good handout to have. I would encourage you to study this top 10 list because, hypothetically speaking, knock on wood, if you are somehow on OSHA's radar or just somehow just randomly picks your employer for an on-site inspection, perhaps this is their cheat sheet. Perhaps this is what they're going to be focusing on. I don't know. I'm not an OSHA inspector, but I can tell you, yeah, maybe. They're going to be looking at fall protection, HazCom, respiratory protection, ladders, scaffolding, blah, blah, blah. This is going to be their go-to. Okay, and obviously this presentation is more focused broadly to all 50 states. Next resource is this lovely safety talk handout. So if you folks are instructors or trainers for your respective employer, feel free to download this. It does have, it's pretty much a summary of what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, and that QR code will go to our landing page of our OSHA top 10 most cited violations. But this is a good handout for you to just do your 10, 15-minute tailgate talk if you want, what have you. We've done the homework for you. So feel free to download that if you want. Okay, let's jump right into it. So we're going to go from 10 to 1. And number 1 is machine guarding. Now, if you saw this, either you're walking your own floor or you're walking, doing an on-site inspection at one of your clients' locations, and you see exposed equipment or machinery, would you put your finger in that? Heck no. So why would your fellow peers or colleagues be subjected to that same hazard, right? So we're going to be talking about competent personnel, right? So I want all of you at the end of this 1-hour webinar to feel like you're more of a competent person if you're not already. Okay, so I say this a lot, and I'm going to say it again. So the way OSHA defines a competent person is that someone who can walk the line, right, and can spot a hazard, an immediate hazard, or maybe a foreseeable one. That's the first part of that definition. But more importantly, the latter part of that definition is, oh, I see that hazard. Wait, is that Alex on the top rung of a ladder? Let me take out my camera, take a photo, and post it on social media. No, that is not a competent person. A competent person is, wait, I see Alex on the top rung of a ladder, and I'm going to correct it. I'm going to mitigate the hazard. I'm going to control it. That's what a competent person is. Someone who can spot the hazard and correct it. Okay? So obviously the biggest culprit out of the 1488 violations under machine guarding, which, by the way, is in the red, because last year, in comparison, was the number 10 spot, didn't go anywhere, but look at the violations. 1,105 for last year. This year, 1,488. It's getting worse. The biggest culprit, 980 violations of those 1,488, were on this very topic here. One or more methods of machine guarding shall be provided to protect the operator, blah, 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 meaning you need to protect any exposed rotating cogs, just like this visual shows. Notice here, that is the applicable federal regulation. And I want to kind of shed light on that because 29 is the title, CFR is the Code of Federal Regulation, 1910 is the part number. This right here, the 212, is the actual section of that regulation. But notice the subsection, A1. This is important because OSHA can actually cite you on multiple occasions on just one regulation. You're going to find a lot of these regulations have subsections in them. And by the way, if you folks want to do something really fun, read a standard. #sarcasm. It's not fun. So a little tidbit though, if you ever have to comb through a regulation to find something applicable to what you're searching for, I wouldn't recommend grabbing your regulation manual that they publish every year. And if you have one, God bless you. That's great for you. It may look like the rainbow's trying to escape itself from that book because of all those little protruding bookmarks or whatever you have in there, or those tabs. I would encourage you folks to kind of lean towards the digital side of things, the electronic side of things. Go to the OSHA website and find the regulation there, Google it. And once you find the applicable regulation you're searching for, once you're in it, hit that Control F on your keyboard. It's the integrated search menu in your web browser. And type in the keyword that you're looking for. And you're going to find every highlighted applicable section of that regulation rather than having to go through every single one with a highlighter on a physical manual. It's a good time saver if you want to go that route. Okay. But some of these regulations are crazy. You'll find them. You'll find 12 subsection A, number 1, capital A, Roman numeral. It goes down to like crazy levels. And then on top of that, you'll see asterisks, which mean exceptions or exempt. So you can find yourself lost in the abyss of regulations. And by the way, the words they're using is all legal jargon. It's hard to interpret. So if you're not legal counsel, it won't make sense to you. So it's just a nightmare to have to read sometimes. But OSHA loves it, and OSHA will cite you on multiple occasions on just one regulation. So be careful with that. Okay. 384 violations under machine guarding were on specifically the point of operation where the actual action happens. It wasn't guarded. This one right here in front of you is more of an ambiguous approach. Machines weren't guarded over rotating parts, blind chips, sparks, and ingoing nip points. This one, number 2, was more at the point of operation. There was no guarding. Okay. And it goes on to exposure to blades at 17, general requirements for machine guards. Guards should be affixed to the machine where possible. That had 37 violations. Go so on and so forth. But I'm going to highlight the biggest culprit under each topic, which is overall a lack of machine guarding. Eye and face protection. So this is the one that's the most baffling for me, because I put this picture for comic relief, and I want to believe it was staged, but notice the number at the very top: 1,582 violations for the fiscal year of 2022. Out of those 1,582, 1,553 of those were on the mere fact that employers were not providing eye and face protection. Can you imagine that? So the green here at the top section, yeah, it went from number 8 to number 9. It did drop. However, last year we had 1,451. This last fiscal year, 2022, 1,582. So although we dropped down from the list, there was more violations documented under this very topic. And let you folks know what number 2 was. At 25, the employer shall ensure that each affected employee uses eye protection that provided. So with side protection, so more specifically goggles, maybe for those splash hazards. Number 3 was the employer shall ensure that each affected employee who wears prescription lens while engaged in operations that involve eye hazards wears eye protection. So that's a good. There's an actual letter of interpretation on this that OSHA published. That prescription, your traditional prescription glasses aren't safety glasses unless they're designed that way. But you folks are quintessential safety professionals. If you are wearing eye protection, what are you looking for? It's the ANSI. It's been ANSI approved, right? So there's going to be an ANSI Z89, I believe is a number -1, where you're going to look for that on your safety glasses. And some of these, again, are designed to have prescription and integrated. And look at that federal regulation there, A1. Look at that right off the bat. They're citing you at A1, which is probably the very first paragraph. There. Okay. I put this image too because it reminds me that I say this often. And if some of you have attended my live presentations, you're going to hear this as a little repetitive, but you're going to see, if you Google safety fails, you're going to find a lot of these images, right? And I say this: leave the improv to comedy. What we mean by that is every time you do a task, it should always be pre-planned, right? You shouldn't have to improvise. You shouldn't have to ad lib. So this gentleman, if this photo wasn't staged, maybe A+ for ingenuity, but not the most effective face. I laugh because it's just funny, but not the best effective face protection. In fact, I want to say if the sparks and the chemicals, if they go in that bag, it's a concentrated area, so it's even worse than covering your whole face with maybe a respirator, perhaps. All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward to number 8. Yeah, fall protection training. This one is very popular, and yeah, if you are issued fall protection, if you need to wear a harness of some sort, or a lanyard, or a restraining device of some sort, and you don't know how to wear it, you shouldn't be wearing it. Plain and simple. You should be previously, prior to being issued fall protection, be trained on it. 1,235 violations on just that. No, nobody's being trained on this. And it even goes deeper. OSHA does specify on one of the other number of violations in my notes. It does say that OSHA says they've even cited on employees receiving training, but not by a competent person. So they were on site inspecting, right? And like they're going to ask people, hey, I see that you're wearing a harness. Were you trained? Yes. Show me the record. Here it is. Who's this person? This guy was just hired last year, and they didn't deem that person as a competent person to train. So what the employers are doing is that they're providing the training, sure, but they're not finding, or they're not delegating, they're not finding the right person to provide that training. Right. So ultimately, if you've been deemed competent by your employer, they've determined that you have enough field experience, right, or qualifications to provide that training. You just can't say, hey, Alex, go train this person on ladder safety. When you just saw Alex step on the final rung of that ladder, that person isn't a competent person, right? So they have to pick the right people to provide these classes, which is why we come out there as a third-party company with no bias. We don't know any of you. We go out there, we provide that training. It's a credibility. It's just an easier thing to do. Okay. So we're going to keep going. Look at the top though. The green side, it went from number 7 to 8. Yay. But it got more violations. So there you go. Go figure. Hard industrial trucks, AKA forklifts. Number 1, 500 violations at safe operation. We've all done it. I think my second job was a warehouse clerk, and I had to operate a forklift. And I was one of these guys. I'm not going to lie. Forklifts are fun to operate. They're like a Bobcat skid steer. They're just fun to operate. You tend to just do wild stuff. And mind you, it was in a controlled environment. It was still unsafe. So we've all done it, but OSHA is now honing in on it, right? They go down on that list, though. 254 violations were on refresher training not being administered. So how often is refresher training? Every 3 years. However, an immediate remedial training has to happen if that person was in a forklift related accident, right? There's other criteria under that. Number 3 on that list, under 223 violations, the employer did not show proof of training. So the people were trained, but they couldn't show that OSHA inspector, hey, where's the proof? So record keeping is important. So make sure you go through jump over all the hurdles and jump through all the hoops to get it done. It's a whole entire process. Number 4 was, if any time a forklift needs to be repaired, it needs to be red tagged. We've seen them. Our instructors are out there doing forklift operator training, and there's exposed wires, the cables, fluids are everywhere, and they're still being operated. Folks, if you have a forklift that has anything exposed, red tag it and get it fixed, because you will be cited on it. Number 5 is inspections. Document your inspections. Even though it's not required, document them. Because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So document your inspections. Number 6, lotto. Yep. Lockout, tagout. Written programs, big one. Procedures, big one, right? Number 2 on the list at 434 violations was training and communication. No training. Number 3 at 338, lack of periodic inspections. So that's a common thing. So a lot of us have these written programs in our workplace, right? And some of these programs have not been open for a while. They have a thick layer of dust. Some of these programs are available through your employer intranet. I get that. But you have to periodically monitor these programs. And a really good employer will delegate a person or persons as the program administrator, the person that needs to monitor them, walk the line. Okay, I have a lockout, tagout. What's written here, is it still feasible? Does it still talk to our current processes, right? That's where the gap starts to happen. That's where the first level of complacency starts to happen, is that we get our programs written and developed, yay, but we forget to monitor it. And some of the stuff outlined in these written programs are so outdated. So help that program administrator. If you're a person who does the work and you're the one that has to do the lockout, tagout, and you find yourself doing something a little more progressive or a little more modern, make sure it's represented or reflected in your written program, because OSHA will cite you on that. Well, I see that Alex is doing it this way, but it's written on how to do it a different way on the actual procedure. So make sure it speaks to current processes. Okay, which is number 4. The employer shall establish a program consisting of energy control procedures, training, and periodic inspections. So that's a big one. Scaffolding absolutely makes the list. And by the way, if you see the part number being 1926, yeah, it's a construction standard. If it's 1910, general industry. So this top 10 most cited violations list speaks to both industries, construction and general. The big one here at 644 violations, each employee on a scaffold for more than 10 feet above a lower level shall be protected from falling to that lower level. Yeah, this picture is a perfect depiction of that. There's absolutely no guardrails, nothing like that. Right? So look out for that. And it goes on to other ones. I want to highlight one of them. Guardrail systems made the list at 152. So if you haven't taken a scaffold class, maybe you don't need to. But if you are working around scaffold, maybe it is a good recommendation to take an awareness level class. If you have been deemed to erect or dismantle, then you are automatically a competent person. Hello. Typically, if you are dealing with scaffold and you do a third-party service, maybe hire a reputable firm that does it all for you, erects it and dismantles it for you. Most employers do that. But if you have just your 1-2 tier level scaffold and you do all that in-house, you're going to definitely have a couple competent people that have to erect that. And they're on top of these regulations, I promise you. Okay, but ladders is a big one too. I believe ladders made number 3 at 277 violations. When scaffold platforms are more than 2 feet above or below a point of access, portable ladders, hook-on ladders, attachable ladders, stair towers, ramps, walkways should be installed and used. Ladders, heck yeah. Ladders always makes the list. Yeah. Last year, number 3 dropped down to number 4, but there's more violations. At 2430, 1,545 of those were on portable ladders used to access to an upper landing surface. The ladder side rail shall extend at least 3 feet above the upper landing surface. This photo, I'm telling you right now, yeah, maybe a good argument, but I don't think it's above 3 feet. Is this the right ladder? Maybe. I've seen step ladders or A-frame ladders that can be used as lean safe ladders. Maybe I'll give them that. But heck, what the heck's going on with the foundation there? Holy cow. Whoa. I mean, A+ for ingenuity again. I love that. But yeah, that's not going to go well for anybody there. That's a big no-no. Maybe the 4-to-1 ratio, maybe. For every foot you do, for every 4 feet, you do 1 foot out. Maybe that looks kind of okay. I would question the ladder decision or choice. I don't know the footing there on the top of the band roof, though. I wouldn't do it. And it's not per code. So this is not the right ladder. You need to get an extension ladder for this type of service. Or better yet, so we're going to cover this shortly, use an aerial lift. Respiratory protection, yeah, that's a big one. Medical clearance, how often do you need to get medically cleared if you're wearing a respirator, folks? OSHA says initial. However, as a program monitor for the respiratory protection program, you got to monitor your personnel. So if there's been a sudden change in weight, or maybe that person is now pregnant, or you may have to go through an immediate re-medical clearance. And that way you can determine whether you can or do have the pulmonary function or capacity to wear a respirator. That's what this violation states right here. Let's face the facts. If you're wearing a respirator, your lungs are working overtime. It does cause a physiological burden on you if you are wearing a respirator. Let's face the facts. So you have to go through this very, very pertinent step, which is be medically cleared prior. And if you don't pass the medical clearance, not the end of the world for you, because fit testing is required for tight fitting respirators only. You can wear a PAPR, which is a powered air purifying respirator. And that's a loose fitting respirator. So if you don't pass your medical clearance, you can still do your job. Your employer can give you a PAPR. So you can be exempt from the fit testing process. Number 2 is HazCom. Yep, we've seen it. Improper labeling. This one right here seems to be an issue still. You have to have a written program on all identified chemicals. You have to have a library of all the SDSs. So this program is going to highlight all that, all your training requirements, the list of all the chemicals that you deal with, all that good stuff. And people don't have that. A lot of these employers just don't do it. And OSHA focuses on that. Last year was at number 5. Guess what? It went from number 5 to number 2. And last year it had 1,939 violations. This past fiscal year, 2,682. And number 1 always is fall protection general requirements. This always makes the top list. So yeah, and it keeps climbing. Look at the red. But at 5271, it jumped from that to 5980. So there you go. That's kind of all just your overall top 10 most cited violations. The thing is, this list does interchange every once in a while. I think 2 years ago, Iron Face took over general PPE. And at the cusp of the inception of the pandemic, guess what made the list? Respiratory protection. Yeah, so everyone's like, hey, time out. What's this? What's that? One of the hot topics was volunteer use versus required. I want to bring this up too. So if there isn't a specific regulation that is applicable to a specific task and inevitably a potential hazard, that OSHA can cite you on their general duty clause. In California, it's the Injury and Illness Prevention Plan, or IIPP. But federally, it's the OSHA general duty clause. It's their umbrella. It's their safety net. So if they walk the line and they're going to see, okay, I see this person, I don't know, making coffee, and there's a hazard there, but there's really no specific regulation on making coffee, they can cite you on this overall general duty clause, which says the top section 5, subsection A1 says overall, your employer has the ultimate responsibility of providing you a safe workplace. And the latter part of that, subsection A2, is employees should follow and comply with this rule. And they should comply with the local policies in place, like, for instance, Heinz and Frank with their 1 to 2 year annual requirement or 2 year requirement for medical clearance. So you have to comply with that. Okay, so I threw that in there. So don't think, oh man, I can get away with this because there's no really regulation that talks about it. Wrong. They can cite you on the general duty clause, or the employer, I should say. I got this. I want to throw this in there as well because, diving deeper into this top 10 list, there's a top 10 standard cited as serious. So as you folks know, serious is defined as a violation that can cause substantial harm or even death. And the employer knew or should have known of the hazard. That's considered a serious violation. So fall protection made the top list, ladders, scaffolding, and these are all serious violations, which only means cha-ching. Absolutely cha-ching. Your employer is going to pay a lot more for these serious violations. Guess what? It gets worse. It gets worse. Willful is where you don't want your employer to be. Complete negligence. Willful in the eyes of OSHA defines it as a violation in one committed with an intentional disregard of or plain indifference. So if your employer knew about the hazard and they did nothing to mitigate it, whoa, that's willful. And that's going to be a cha-ching, cha-ching. That's going to be a heftier price tag for that citation. I'm hearing you guys. I'm hearing your wheels turning. Wait, Eric, how much is that? How much are citations? What if it's willful? What if it's not other than serious? What if it is serious, right? How much is that? Well, that's how much, right? So a serious or other than serious or posting requirements, it's going to cost your employer $15,625 per violation. Let me remind you, as I prefaced earlier, under one regulation, you can be cited multiple times. Now, am I using a scare tactic? Maybe, because some OSHA inspectors will work with you. They do stack. Absolutely, Catherine. In fact, there was a recent press release that OSHA is now honing in on usual suspects, and they're doing an IB, I believe, instance by instance now. Don't quote me on this. I didn't read it per se in very detail, but they are. You may want to Google OSHA IBI or instance by instance, and they can definitely stack up. Yeah. The big one here, though, as I talked about, cha-ching, cha-ching, is the willful or repeated at $156,259. That's crazy. It's a lot of money. Expensive. So a lot of case studies out there about this, a lot of case studies you can read upon. Some are locally, unfortunately. I know some of you have already heard about them, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. And any of you have seen this upside down pyramid? In fact, this upside down pyramid was featured on the last iteration of the NFPA 70E standard cover. But anyhow, NIOSH created it. I believe NIOSH and the CDC created it. And I can guarantee you that if you, in fact, or you per se are doing an OSHA inspection, you may want to follow this. But I wanted to cover it because this is a great way, maybe a guide to how to attack a hazard that you've seen because you are a competent person. So let's follow this pattern here. The number one way and best and most effective way to control a hazard is what? Eliminate it. Completely get it out of the way. Number two is substituting it. Sure. Replacing the hazard. Number three is adding engineering controls. There's really cool engineering controls out there. You'd be amazed. Which is isolating the hazard. Number three is administrative controls, which basically means you can add, I won't give you a cheat sheet on that, but I'm going to go through group activity. And the last one, the bottom is PPE, which is a common misconception. Just because you're issued PPE doesn't mean that your employer has given you the most effective way to protect yourself. Look at it. It's the very last measure to control a hazard. Now, some of these employers are doing excellent job. They may be issuing you PPE on top of the top three here, which is fantastic. They're supplementing the hazard control, right? In conjunction to these top three. Obviously, if they have eliminated the hazard, you won't need any of this. Does that make sense? But if they're giving you PPE on top of this, A+. But if they're only exclusively giving you PPE, this is why it's important for you to know how to put it on and wear it. Number one, we've all seen this tripping hazard, right? But here's the deal. This isn't your electrical cable. This is an Ethernet cable, which means it's providing you internet. But what's the best way to eliminate this tripping hazard? You go wireless. You still need the function, right? But you are going to completely remove the cable by installing a wireless internet connection. Now, here's a good discussion to have. Typically, when you have to eliminate a hazard, it's typically it's linked to more hands on deck, maybe a heftier price tag, maybe more hours dedicated to get that done, which is why employers will go to the next level down, which is substituting the hazard, right? So this is a best case scenario, but sometimes it isn't a feasible option for your employer. So keep that in mind. So, but in this case, if you do have an exposed cable that provides you internet, right, you can perhaps install a wireless router, which is the best way to mitigate the hazard. But maybe some employers like, it's going to take too much of an infrastructure setup. I have to hire an IT guy. I just don't have the time right now to do it. Or let's go to step number 2, which is, by the way, substitution, which is the second best way to control this hazard. Are you guys getting it? Right? Which in some cases is maybe the most feasible attack, right? So just a heads up on that. What is the most effective way to add engineering control? You can't rewire, you can't relocate the wire. It has to stay there. You're going to have to add a cord cover or a mat. That's an engineering control, or a rug, absolutely. Now, is it the best effective, most effective way to tackle that hazard? No, as we discovered, wireless connection, relocate, wire in the attic, sure. If we can't do that, the hazard has to stay there. Let's isolate it. Let's put a rug or a cord cable cover over it. This is an example of engineering controls. Let's drop down that list, though. What do you think is the best way to add administrative controls? You can't eliminate it. You can't relocate, nor can you put a cover on it. It has to stay there. You add signage. Another example of admin controls is subjecting those employers in that area in less time. Have them work less hours, right? Or remove them from the area, right? That's an example of admin controls. You folks are getting it. Yeah, not rocket science, right? We don't need a degree in health and safety to figure this out, because we have this lovely upside down pyramid that we can follow along. It's a great guide. And lastly, the pinpoint, the last bottom tier level of that upside down pyramid, which is PPE. What is the most effective PPE for an exposed tripping hazard? This may be a bit overkill, but we can have people wear knee guards if there is a tripping hazard that we can't cover. Unfortunately, I hope to never see that. But another thing that we wanted to shed light on is that if you are issued PPE, make sure it fits you. And I'm talking to you, women. I hate to say it, but PPE traditionally has been designed for men. So if you've been issued PPE, make sure it fits your body type. That's your employer's responsibility. If it doesn't fit, find a healthy way to convey that message to your supervisor. Hey, supervisor, thank you so much for issuing this fall protection. But guess what? It doesn't fit my body. And the good news is that there are vendors out there that provide sex-specific PPE now. It's out there. So there you have it. That's just kind of like a group exercise to kind of figure out a way to, you see a hazard. I have been deemed a competent person because I took a 1-hour webinar with Eric Garcia over at ehsInc, and I'm going to mitigate it. How do I control that hazard? Well, I'm going to remember this upside down pyramid. What's the best way to control that hazard? Well, I see Alex on the top rung of that ladder. He needs to fix that overhead light. I can't remove that hazard. However, maybe I can think of maybe an extension pole that eliminates the fall hazard. That's the best way. An aerial lift with an installed OSHA compliant guardrail. Yeah, it's expensive to change a light bulb, but you get my point.